because if they were, you wouldn't be able to comfortably in your position sit there and say, be careful, we shouldn't go there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not happening to you.
Okay. So you don't, like, I guess what would be
If your father,
mm-hmm.
if your father, your brother, your sister
mm-hmm.
got their ass whooped by the police, maybe even died, I don't think you would be comfortable saying, hang on a minute. We don't want to fall back in a past or a historical time where someone else was reelected. We've got to be more methodical about this. I don't think you would be coming from that same position. And I think, and I feel that way because it hasn't happened to you. So it doesn't deeply affect you. It may disturb you seeing this all the time, maybe like, oh gosh, that's just, it's terrible. But as a Black person, it is very hard to swallow, to see all the time people dying who look like you.
Yeah.
It's just it's a damaging, it's traumatic. It's traumatic. I'm not desensitized to it. Every time I see it, I feel like vomiting.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst experiences. And it's one of the worst things to see. And I hope and pray it never happens to me. It never happens to one of my siblings, because it already feels like it's happened to me, and it has happened to me, and it continues to happen to me. So I think if you were sitting in my position, I don't think you'd be comfortable saying what you just said. And I think you'd be very uncomfortable if I said to you what you just said, which is, hang on a minute, reevaluate this. Anger leads to violence. And in addition to that, on the flip side and I understand to a very limited degree your worry about Trump, but the police are killing us. What do you expect? What do you expect? Police and regular civilians who are supported by the police are killing us.
Yeah.
How can you say, hey, based on history, we don't want to? How can you come from that place?
I guess because that's kind of how I look at everything. When any situation, I kind of always just look at it like, in our past, how have we reacted to these events or similar events to this? What has been the outcome? Is that the desired outcome? If not, how can we try and avoid having that outcome again? That's just how my brain works. How?
So,
oh, go ahead.
So there's not enough angry people. There's a lot of people who are in your position who are worried and scared because they don't want their normalcy shaken up.
I want normalcy shaken up very much.
Well, if you did, you'd be okay with the violence. You'd be okay with the violence because you would understand where it's coming from, which is a deep pain, which means that it's a righteous thing to do. It's righteous to be angry at this moment. Yeah. Because something is terribly wrong. And if only Black people are going to be angry about this, and we have people who are supposed to be our allies who are telling us, hey, be careful of history. That's not how we do anything. That's not how we change. It's anger that also helps to change things. Yeah. And if enough white people, like those owners, those basketball owners, who get sick of those black basketball players protesting, if they decide, well, shit, I might as well do something about this so these dudes play, even if it's that, they can't empathize, they can sympathize because they're like, shit, my money is going to be lost. I'm affected. Even if it's that much, there's going to be some shit that's going to change. And that came out of anger.
What do you feel drove record numbers of white people in America to protest if it wasn't anger?
What do I feel?
Yeah, because you don't feel white people are not angry about like black
I don't
people
feel
being-
there are enough white people who are angry. No, I think that there are some white people who are angry, but I don't feel like there are enough white people who are angry. If there were enough white people who are angry about this issue,
Mhm.
we would see some legislation being changed. We would see some people who would be like, you're right, abolish the police, reformat it. We'd see some radical movement because we've seen white people get upset. We've seen the Boston Tea Party. We've seen white people get upset.
This is not comparable to that. Like that was so much easier than this. That was just throwing some tea in the water. This is getting 50 state legislatures to act right, and our federal government to act right, and local governments across the country, which is thousands and thousands, to act right.
Yeah. So so it should. So
Well,
exactly, it was a simple issue, right? To a degree, even though I don't think it was a simple issue, but we can label it that then, right? And white people took up arms and they're like, hell no, this is a problem. So where are you? So there aren't enough
what
white people
kind of touching on
who are uncomfortable, if not angry, uncomfortable
Mhm.
to where they're like, all right, I've got to defend. It was amazing seeing, different things in protests, like seeing white women, talk about how they basically could empathize. I'm a mother. I have children. I remember when George Floyd called out for his mother, and this is the way I empathize. This is the way I connect to this, not necessarily because he's black, but because at least I understand what it's like to be a mother and have children, right? And so it was amazing. It was amazing to see other, white people be like, I am going to be your physical shield between you and the police officers in case you get hurt. If there were more white people with money, more white people without money, more white people who just did the right thing.
Mhm.
And and I hate to say it, but it starts with anger. It really starts with pain. Mm-hmm. But if you can't connect to, to anger, you can at least connect to pain.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, but either way, there's a thing called righteous anger, and to generalize and say that it's all about violence, and so we may just get an opposition party in, as you're saying right now, which you didn't say in that post. What you did say was something like it's used to manipulate, which completely derailed from the topic at hand. So I was like, why are you even saying this? Like you have a black girlfriend. Mm-hmm. We do a show together. How could you come for me like that? I took it so personally. And it's like, the right thing to do in that moment, especially if I text you and I'm like, hey, what you did, you can't do. It's off base. It's inappropriate. I was so embarrassed and humiliated. I had to delete it on your behalf, and the right thing to do is just say, because what happened was you stepped on my neck. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if it wasn't your intention, you stepped on my neck.
Sorry about that. I
I
obviously.
appreciate that. That's all that needed to happen is you need to say, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you were getting at, or ask me what the hell's going on. Like, but to blankly agree with something that is in direct opposition to a movement of which is trying to generate something to save my people. And as a Black woman, I'm saying this. I'm saying, you know, let's do something to pacify me like that is terrible. It was terrible. And I was hurt, but I was more so shocked. And I guess this is part of the reason why I wanted to have the conversation, is that I think that a lot of times when people think that they're doing the right thing, or they think that like they've got something beneficial to add to the conversation, sometimes all that you're meant to do is listen and be with me and be with us and be in the journey, or not.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this whole topic is just, at least from, I don't want to speak on behalf of white people because I don't really talk to white people to gather consensus on this, but from my perspective, it's extremely confusing because you hear conflicting things. Like, you hear things like we need to have open and honest conversations, but then you can't have an open and honest conversation because the second you speak, you get attacked. So it's like, how do you have an open and honest conversation? And
You
then,
ask the question. You don't give your opinion. You ask the question, because from the moment you saw, as you said earlier, from the moment you saw my post, you misunderstood it,
yeah,
or you didn't get it, or you had an initial question, which was, you obviously feel that there's some kind of outrage. Maybe you should have asked me instead of just agreeing with a person who's opposing me on a very sensitive topic, which you knew what the topic was.
okay. The other kind of thing too is like, you keep hearing that this complaint about white people not doing enough, but you never really hear like, what do you want to see from white people that would be satisfactory to, I guess I can't have you speak for Black people, but what do you want to see from white America that would be satisfactory to you, for you to feel like, all right, white people finally care enough?
Stand up for our rights, show up with us. Don't tell us how to do the work. You do the work next to us.
I guess that's the thing though, is like, what is the work? Because all I really ever hear in response to all these, every time there's a shooting, there's all this protesting, anger, eventually a little bit of violence, it subsides, and then everybody's kind of like, we need to solve this, but then the only solution ever presented is to vote for Democrats. And we kind of keep ignoring the fact that Democrats are responsible for the mass incarceration. Democrats are responsible for the increased, not solely responsible, they are equally as complicit for the increased policing of brown neighborhoods. So, if that's, I don't know, it seems like it never goes beyond vote for Democrats, which is, I don't feel satisfactory and is never going to solve things, but I never see like any increased push beyond that. That's why I kind of just like get concerned that it's just going to keep going in a cycle.
First of all, what happened in the past, as an example, Rodney King, yes, it's not anything new, right? So it's been happening for years. It's not just the Democrats.
Yeah.
It's been happening forever. We can go all the way back to slavery. So you can't just blame the Democrats and say, well, it's because of the Democrats. No.
I said both parties.
So no, it's not. But currently, what we're dealing with now is something completely different, because we have a president and his party who's completely comfortable comfortable with this type of shit.
They have been for our entire lives, though.
Yeah, but this is on a completely different scale. It's a completely different scale because out in the public, before we didn't really see it like this. Now we're seeing it everywhere all the time. And the same people who drew guns at peaceful protesters, the same two white attorneys who drew guns at peaceful protesters were at the fucking Republican convention.
Yeah, I saw that in the news.
So we're dealing with a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
Completely different ball game with this administration, and it comes to and at the base of it, we're talking about human life right now, and it's fucking okay. What's happening is fucking okay.
Yeah.
So no, it doesn't just boil down to vote for Democrat, because right now yes, that's one thing. Yes, we need to vote Democrat right now because I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice. I don't see a way out of this one.
What
even if I wanted to, sorry?
What state do you vote in?
California.
Okay. Oh, at least you know your state's going to go blue.
So, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, voting Democrat. I mean, I know, in my opinion, it's like, it's my life. It's my life. It's my brother's life. Right now, it's my life because right now, it's looked at as okay. The government looks at this kind of shit as okay. It's fine. A 17-year-old can go kill these two protesters. The cops knew about it. We're okay with it. The president's not going to say anything about it. Our government's not going to say anything about it. Whoop-de-doo, it's fine. It's okay, meaning it's normal. We should be fine with that. That is fucking fucked up, and that shouldn't be okay. I understand it was happening in the past, but we didn't know about it to this scale, and we didn't realize it was happening like that. And if it was publicly, if it was public like this by a Democrat, there'd be some shit because we're living in a different time. I'm not saying that, history is history, and that history doesn't, I'm not saying that history doesn't repeat itself.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But going back to your question, how white people can be there for black people, ask the questions and then show up for us in a big way. Stand up for us in a big way. My husband, who is white, has never been to a protest before. He's been very comfortable his whole life. You know what I'm saying? His whole life living as a white, heterosexual, attractive male, smart, attractive male. And he's never been to a protest. But you know what? When it comes down to it, he's like, holy shit. Even though all the things that are happening, they're outrageous, and I've always thought they're outrageous, and I've always thought they were wrong. I actually actively have to do something about it. He said I have an incentive, which I still think is crazy because I'm like, bitch, what do you mean you have an incentive? It's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, to go out and show your support of another person or another community that's being done wrong to. But his incentive is he's gonna have mixed kids. Those are his kids.
Yeah.
So but that shouldn't even, it's like, and so I had to re-explain to him as well. I said that shouldn't even be your reason. Your reason should be empathy. And if you cannot empathize with Black bodies dying all the time, it's too distant from you, then try and think like maybe it will be me. And if you can't empathize with it being me, then maybe think God, it's just a painful thing. You don't have to get angry. It's just a painful thing. It's a pain because that's someone's son, that's someone's child. You know what it's like to be a son, a child. You know what it's like.
Mhm.
This is a human life. These are human lives.
Yeah.
And no one wants to talk about this. Like, I don't want to talk about this. This is really uncomfortable for me because I feel like I'm begging someone or begging people to be with me. And who wants to do that? I want to stand on my own, and I don't need these blanketed like, woe is me, I'm having a really hard time. But if you can support and you've got the power to, considering you're white, considering you're a male, considering all these things, it's your duty, it's your legacy, it's your everything. You get to be on the right side of history. It's like all these fucking positives.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it's kind of interesting because at the same time, like I have been, man, what's it, 2020? I've been speaking out about this stuff since probably like 2002, 2003, since I first learned about it, like in sociology classes and criminal justice classes. And because you don't learn this shit in high school. Like, if you're an average white person and you don't go to college, I don't know when you would ever even know this information because you don't learn it in high school. And it's not told to you on the news. So the only way I ever learned about it was by being, I pursued an education degree. So I took some sociology classes. I took some social science classes because I was a social studies major. And I learned about all these statistics that just blew my fucking mind. Because I was like, what the fuck? Black people make up like, I don't know, 15% of the population, but like 50% of our prison population. What the fuck? Like, the war on drugs is like, all these things that were happening to Black and brown communities. I did not learn about that stuff until I was in my early 20s in college. The moment I learned about that stuff completely changed my view of things, and, spoke out about it ever since. But to kind of, I don't know, try your best to kind of be an ally along the way, but then everything you ever see about you is like basically putting you down and telling you you're not doing enough. It's kind of like, eventually it's kind of like, what is enough? Like, and then I don't know, it's just very confusing because, and I kind of don't think it's really aimed at like
It can
people
be
like me so much.
honestly.
What's that?
Sorry.
I
I'm
said, I
sorry.
don't think it's necessarily aimed at people like me so much. It's probably aimed at people more like my father, who is a lifelong loyal Democrat, but doesn't really ever talk about injustice. It's not like injustices aren't like a top priority for him because my dad lives where I grew up in an all white town. So you don't see racial injustices in that. There's no racial injustice around you. It doesn't impact your daily life. It doesn't impact people. Me, obviously I've been with my girlfriend for 6 years, but before that I've had Black coworkers, Black friends. I've lived in I lived in Baltimore for 2 years where I was pretty much the only white person at my job. So seeing, and then obviously like when I have, especially Black male friends, like I've never heard any of my Black female friends really talk about issues with police or police brutality, but a lot of my Black male friends have told me stories about it. Like, especially like my Black male friends that grew up like in more inner city, urban areas, like they've told me stories about getting fucked with by cops, like, and just the shit they've dealt with. And it's just, so when I see those videos, like I know that could be like one of my friends. Like that could be, and now my friends are old enough to where they have kids that age. Like I have Black male friends that have Black male sons that are, 20, 21, 22 years old. Like when I see those videos, like it immediately hits me like that could be my friend's son. Like that's just crazy.
So if you know those things, your job as an ally, as someone who's got a Black girlfriend, as someone who may have Black kids, as someone who's got Black friends, as someone who's got a Black co-host, if you see as an example, a post that's like, this is what it is, and it's from a Black voice with a Black perspective, you got to support it. It's your job to support me.
What if I disagree with you?
If you disagree with me,
Like, what if
you
I see
ask
the
me
move?
a
Oh,
question.
okay.
If you and first of all, like if you disagree with me, you message me privately and you say, I disagree with you because blah, 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 blah. But from the jump, you said to me, I thought your post meant this. I wasn't sure. Does it mean blah, blah, blah? But even if it didn't, I'm coming with a Black perspective on an issue that you know is real.
Mm-hmm.
So why disagree with me?
I don't know. Am I not allowed to have a disagreeing opinion? Like, I mean, it's just, well,
It's
I
my
guess.
perspective. It's my perspective it's my perspective and it's my emotion. So to tell me not to say anger is used to manipulate is to one, pacify me, two, tell me indirectly that there's another way to deal with this, which is saying you know better. And I'm saying this is my perspective, this is my journey, and you should be supporting me because this isn't happening to you. It's happening to me. So how can you come and tell me?
Well, I guess the other confusing part too is like I have Black friends that have different views on this topic. So then how do I know which one to support and which one to just, I don't know, because if they all don't agree, like how do I
Black
support?
friends who
Sorry.
have different views on this topic, as in they're saying things like you shouldn't be outraged?
Well, no, it's like the entire Black community doesn't share one view on how to respond to what's happening right now. There are diversity of opinions and thoughts. Some range from more peaceful things, some range from more aggressive, kind of seeing burning buildings as like putting pressure on politicians and being a good thing. Some people fall into that more Martin Luther King camp. So, and this has always been a thing throughout civil rights.
Just as an example, sorry, just to bring this up, not as an example, you don't think Martin Luther King was angry in the beginning?
He was angry, but he also
of course
spoke against violence.
Every single black person transitioned from anger to peace because they were tired. And they gave up. As in they said, listen, we'll go the peaceful route because we're tired of being angry. I'm not tired of being angry. I just got started being angry for real because for the first time, which I explained to you, I think in one of your other videos on your show, I know what it's like to now be a black person in a predominantly white country and be seen and identified as black. It didn't happen to me. In America, I had lots of privileges of my own, lots of privileges of my own, which I recognize, which I might not have been able to see then. But if someone else told me, which my mother would say to me, you don't know what I go through. You don't know what I've sacrificed for you. You don't know what happens every day we go to that store and somebody asks me if you're my child. You don't know. And I said, you're right. I don't know. You don't know what it's like to be from another country. Because I don't know. And now I know. And I will never silence somebody who has a perspective on what's actually happening to them.
I understand what you're saying.
Because that's what's happening to them.
Yeah, I guess I didn't say what I said in an attempt to silence you. So the fact that you
But you did, right? So it's like you did. So that's besides the point. It's like it doesn't matter if it was an attempt or if it was not your intention. You did. So, and this is what I'm trying to say is a lot of white people, particularly white liberals, as an example, my best friend, violence is not the answer. Okay, I should be quiet then.
Well, speaking isn't violence. Violence is like violence.
But anger, as you were saying, leads to violence. Anger is also used as a manipulation tool, right? So it's the same thing. It's the same thing here. And so I'm saying it's not helpful. For me, it's not helpful, and it's not helpful to another Black person, and it's not helpful if you're trying to be my ally, which I think you want to be, or if you don't, like, fuck off my page. Like, what's going on? Like, why would you detract from the issue at hand, which is this is wrong. Yeah. Why are you telling me about, there's another way? Let me teach you another way. Let me help you manage your emotions. There's a better way about going about it. And again, going back to your earlier comment about, there are Black people who see it differently. We don't need to be as angry. We need to go different route. They started off angry.
Yeah.
No one's comfortable. No Black person's comfortable with this.
I just want to be very clear. I am not angry.
Sorry?
I said, I just want to be clear. I definitely am angry.
Well, then don't play devil's advocate on a Black person's perspective on an issue like this.
Noted.
It's too much. If I did it to you based on your perspective on a conversation that was about you, your people, how you identify, and I just came in there talking about there's another way, be like, get the fuck out of here, Kahiza. Like, what are you doing? How do you know? Who are you?
Yeah, I understand that, because that is pretty common now, because everybody I don't know, it seems like everybody's an expert on what being white is like, even though they've never been white. So I definitely understand. And that really is kind of infuriating when people try to lecture you on what being white is like, even though they've never been white before. So I completely understand what you mean by that. So I apologize for, making you feel that I was trying to silence you or detracting from what you were trying to say.
I really appreciate that. I actually really appreciate that. And I really wish that my former best friend, who I still hold very dear, because she's a good person, and I'm not trying to say that these people that I know, for example, or even some of these racists that I know, aren't actually really good people. Mm-hmm. They're actually fucking really great people. But I do wish that, she let go of her ego and her pride and see a little bit past herself and her circumstances like you have right now. And I just want to say I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I feel like it may be harder for her too, because I don't know. I feel like, well, how do I say this? I feel like white men have been more kind of under scrutiny for a while now, whereas white women have largely avoided that scrutiny up until this Karen thing started in the past year or so. But
you're right. So, and it comes from white women victimization. They're so used to being the victim, mm-hmm. Like all the, you know what I mean? Like Emmett Till, just as an example. I'm using a really bad example.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean.
But you know what I mean? They're so used to being the victim that's a normal place for her to go to.
Yeah.
Very comfortable for her to go to. Unlike yourself, it's like, shit. Like, I mean, the other thing is too, right? You got a Black girlfriend. So I know you know what, you know what I mean? Like, I know it's not new for you having a Black girl be like, excuse me.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
We've had some heated talks over some of these things. But, we've talked about it enough to where now she kind of understands, my perspective on things, and I understand her perspective on things. So, we don't really argue about it anymore, but there were some kind of heated arguments about these kind of things along the ways. Because obviously, like, the thing I think a lot of people just need to understand too is, everybody has different life experiences. So not everybody's going to see things the way you see it. So sometimes you have to explain kind of like where you're coming from and, giving context to it helps people kind of understand where you're coming from, and then it's easier to sympathize with you or kind of empathize with you. But a lot of times people just kind of hear somebody say something they don't like or don't agree with, and then especially for white people, then they just kind of tar you as like you're a racist. Or because I get that all the fucking time on social media, like if I comment on something, somebody will like accuse me of being a racist or Trump supporter. And it's like, dude, what the? I didn't even say anything that would indicate I supported for Trump. I just disagreed with your opinion. So you labeled me
My
a Trump supporter.
suggestion, because I know you're a white liberal, my suggestion is just to ask them a question. If you continuously ask people questions, and I'm not saying that as someone who's like, like, I'm not trying to teach you anything is what I'm trying to say, but I am saying in efforts to avoid those titles, because it's going to come if you continue to not investigate, just give a blanketed opinion. It's going to come across in the wrong way, which is exactly, the only reason why your post affected me so greatly is because you didn't ask me. And if you had asked me, we would have had a discussion about it. And then you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, it's over. But this was great because it's like, I really do feel that people need to see adults communicating these types of issues and working through them.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to see. So it's a good thing that it happened and we transitioned to the show where we could, really delve into this, because it's a much more complex, I think, discussion.
Yeah.
And it involves a lot of empathy. It involves a lot of, listening to another human being. And I think we just did that.
Yeah. Because like, I feel based on what I saw the past few months that like the vast majority of white America, obviously not all of white America is ever going to be on board, but I feel like a good majority of white America is on board with wanting police reform at this time. Because, I mean, there were so many cities across this country and states and cities that are like 95% white that had these massive protests that shocked the shit out of me. Like places like Des Moines, Iowa. Like what? Like I've never heard of a protest in Des Moines, Iowa. Whereas normally it's always been like confined to like large cities with large black populations. Whereas this most recent time, even in my fucking hometown is like 15,000 white people. They had a protest of like 200 people at our courthouse. And, people, I think there might have even been somebody that tried to run a couple people over. Like people in my hometown where I grew up, hearing people use racial slurs, I mean, too regularly, were protesting for Black Lives Matter in my hometown. Like that is something like, I don't know. Cause when I hear people like kind of making it seem like, I guess we haven't changed. I'm like, dude, that is proof to me that something has changed, because that is something that blew my mind. Like I'm still shocked that happened. Like I still can't imagine that happened in my hometown. And that happened in towns all across this country though.
That's interesting, because you're definitely a history repeats itself type of person. And I would say, just playing devil's advocate, that like it's a trendy topic.
Yeah.
It's hyped to BLM right now. You know what I mean? But yeah. I would love to keep positive, and to think that, yeah, we're changing. And I feel big things have transpired in terms of like organizational leadership. The NBA like not playing is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Huge.
It's the first time in 50 years that professional athletes have really used their platform or status to stand up for anything in this country since 1968, when Muhammad Ali and those John Carlos and the other guy, I'm forgetting his name, at the Olympics, but that was the last time, because they saw what happened to those athletes. Those athletes had their careers taken, their lives basically taken away. And that white Australian dude that was involved too, he had his life ruined over that. And people saw that and they were like, I'm not sticking my neck out. I'm not. And now we finally have people that are willing to do it again. So it's
forfeit. You know what I mean? Like, stop playing, not even raise a fist. This is a complete act of defiance. You know, that's how you be an ally. But those people are black. But I'm saying, like, as soon as as soon as those owners jump on board and other rich, wealthy white people see this is a movement, and it's not it because you know, it's hard to relate if you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't have giraffe money, how do you speak to somebody else who doesn't have giraffe money? How do you talk to, how do you relate to them? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, a lot of these people, I feel like a lot of these rich, wealthy white people, these basketball owners, for example, they only move if something is really affecting them. Yeah. And in this case, their pockets are going to be affected. And I hope that it continues in that same vein. And the more of that we see, because as soon as their pockets are affected, they're going to do something about that shit.
Yeah, I feel like this actually touches on a much, not a big, I don't want to say a bigger issue, but an issue that's kind of being ignored as part of the push for, I don't want to call it equality, but economic justice, or justice in general for Black people, because the thing that nobody's really talking about right now is, you know, these rich white people that basically control everything, they will give you criminal justice reform because that doesn't cost them money. But when it comes to actual true equality and justice, that is going to eventually come to economic justice. And that is going to mean them losing money. And when it comes to that point, if we ever push it to that point, because it's never ever been pushed to that point before, Martin Luther King was the only one that really got close, and they killed him before he could really get there. Good. But if these NBA athletes, because they're able to do this because they have a labor union too, a strong labor union. A lot of people, you know, they're talking in our country at least about how labor interest and union membership has been kind of rising during COVID, because people are kind of like, well, I'm fucked without a union. I might as well try and get a union. People are seeing now like what collective labor can kind of force their bosses to kind of concede to. And I got to say, like, rich people across this country do not want to see that become a trend, because that is the final piece to full justice. Because, you know, without economic justice, there is no justice. There is no full justice for Black people until that economic component gets mixed in too. And, you know, people see NBA players collectively doing stuff like this, it might start giving them ideas at their workplace, which has been increasing already. So this could only fan that fire. And I hope it does, because, you know, that's the part we never really talk about, is the economic justice part. But if we start touching on that too, we have a chance to really make some big strides that we've never in this country's history had a chance to make before. Like, this is an unprecedented opportunity to do amazing things. And I mean, as somebody who I said before, like, I always kind of look at history to like, how have we handled this? We've never had this situation before. So anybody that's trying to tell you what's going to happen is just kind of making stuff up, because there is no evidence to go on for how this could go. Like, this can go any direction right now, because this is like an unprecedented movement, and it's
correct.
Beautiful.
Which is why, and you were saying anger manipulates, and I'm like, any emotion manipulates, and which is why when you were saying anger, you know, anger leads to violence, and, you know, it's alluding in the violence, and then we're going to get Trump. I'm like, oh my God.
I might have just been having a moment. I don't know.
But here we are. I'm really glad we came full circle. Excuse me. I'm really glad we came full circle with this. I'm really glad you were receptive, and, you know, Chris, I love you. You know what I mean? I think you're a kind person. I think you're a good person. I think you're funny, and I think you're smart, you know, but I was like, what the fuck's going on right now? I might have to, I might have to put his ass on the chop, and, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck's going on? This has been a really good conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, it was a good one. I was a little nervous because I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it went pretty good, and I feel better at the end of it. So I'm glad we had this talk, and I guess hopefully people enjoy it. And, anybody watching, like, share, subscribe below. And until next week.
Oh my God. Orange is not my new black.